Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to my talk. It's easy to create a good-looking product, but how about a useful one? My name is Eleftheria and I'm coming from Greece. You can find me on my social media, on my email. I'm very active on Twitter as well, so if you want to catch up or anything, you can find me there. And today we are going to talk about UX and UI. What is UX? What is UI? We will going to talk about heuristics, and we were going to see some examples of how we can improve our work as developers. So although currently I'm not a developer, I used to be one. I used to be a front-end developer, and I used to work in small companies. And in small companies, they usually don't have dedicated designers, so the developer has to do the design work as well. Have you been in that situation? Okay, now I can see many hands. So I decided to study a little bit more design. While I started looking into design, I realized that a lot of times the problem is not the design, but is the UX, the user experience. So everything starts from there. First is the UX, then is the design, and then is the coding part. So let's start. All right, the first thing that we are going to do is demystify what is UX and what is UI. UX stands for user experience and UI stands for user interface. And although there is an ocean of content out there, you can find a lot of things, most of them I'm afraid that they are doing a poor job because they are only explaining the perspective of the user, so how a user sees something. But we are going to talk also about the perspective of the developer or the designer. Let's get started with the perspective of the user. And what is user interface? This is the simplest thing, the one that we can understand easier. So from the user's perspective, the user interface is what the user interacts with a product, whereas on the other hand, the user experience is how he interacts with that. Is it an app? Is it a product? It doesn't matter, but it's how. One thing is what we see, and the other thing is what we feel. Now, from the designer's perspective, this is a little bit more controversial. The user interface is only, let's say, the tip of a huge icicle. It's only the part that we can see, but it's not only that. We know that beneath that, there is a huge mountain that holds everything together. And this is from the designer's perspective or the developer's perspective. And in this case, these two things are more connected than we would like, maybe. All right, so let's keep going. We will continue with an example. What would you prefer, having an app, a riding-sharing app that doesn't show you where you are, doesn't show your driver location, doesn't show you how much this ride will cost you, or would you prefer another kind of app that it will show you all of these things? It will help you, it will save your favorite destinations, it will show you how it will cost, and all of these kind of things. Which one would you prefer? Exactly. Yeah, so I think that this case, that example was a very obvious one, but sometimes when we have our own product, because we have designed it, because we have coded, we think that everything is simple and everything is beautiful. But what if we try to give our product into someone that doesn't know anything about it? Will he or she be able to handle everything as he's supposed to do? That's the question. Okay, now let's move on with what does a UX designer do, and trust me, he does a lot of things. Let's start with a quick history lesson. I promise it's going to be a very short one. Everything started with Don Norman at about 1995 and even earlier. Don Norman is an engineer at Apple. He started as a mechanical engineer and then he did a master's in psychology. And he was a pioneer because he was the first man that decided to do a user research. He saw how people interact with tech products. And he was the first one doing something like that. And that's why now we have all these able products. Recommend the design of everyday things. It's the most common one, and it's very simple and everyone can understand it. Either you are a designer, either you are a developer, and you can find it for free as well, but I didn't tell you that. All right, so now let's finally see what a UX designer do. I have here a pyramid with 5 stages. We will start from the bottom one to the top. We have user research and analysis, content strategy, information architecture, interaction design, and visual design as well. So on the last stage, we will start with that, the user research and analysis. Here you can see a lot of things. Some of them are user interviews, user behavior studies, focus groups, and surveys. And when everything is done, then we move on to creating user personas, user stories, empathy maps, and customer journeys. And when this is done, the designer will keep moving, and this time he will work with a content strategy. And in this level we have stuff as writing product copy and microcopy, selecting the right wording and tone for the target users, writing emails, messaging, and designing emails, and all this stuff. Some of you may think that this is boring, but this is really, really important, and it's something that has to be done if we want to have a nice project and a clear idea. Now the other level is even more important, the information architecture. Here it's the bloodline that connects the 2 previous one with the 2 that are about to come. And in this level we have things such as card sorting, sitemaps, wireframes, user flows. And when everything is done and all the research is done, we will continue with the interaction design and the visual design. I'm not going to give you a lot of details here because these 2 levels are something that the UI designers will work mostly. So by now we have seen what UX is, what user experience is. So let's move a little bit to UI as well. Now, the very, very, very common mistake is that people think UI is only about colors, it's only about images, it's only about buttons, how big or how small it's going to be, if it's going to be up or down. Let me tell you, it's not only that, it can be much more than that. For example, we have these devices. Okay, by now everyone knows these devices. This also has a UI design, and it's not something that we see. It doesn't have like any big button. Here we have audio. This is also a kind of design. And if we go to the past, we have this example as well. This is a primitive design, but it's also a design. We all know that this kind is textual. Again, we don't have buttons, we don't have big images, we don't have anything, we don't have colors most of the times. It's just some text. This is still a design. And what does a UI designer do? So let's see the pyramid once again. We will focus on the 2 level tops. The 2 levels on the top, the interaction design and the visual design. And here we have the designer will focus mostly on some surface things. So yes, buttons, yes, typography, but it's not only that, it's much more. The designer has to have a great variety of skills, things such as typography, color theory, iconography, illustration, visual hierarchy, and a lot more. And in the last step, we have the visual design, and here the focus is on possible variations of the screen and how it will respond to users' inputs and stuff like that. And this one, just don't forget to design for every screen and make it fully responsive, because you will have the complaints, you know this stuff. All right, now let's keep going. I hope that by now you have understood that UX is not UI. From the user's perspective, these 2 things, it may be a little bit separate, because one thing is what he touched, what he sees, but from the other hand, the user experience is mostly what he feels. but from the designer's perspective or the developer's perspective, these things are connected. UI, either we want to or not, it's part of UX, and we can't have UI if we don't have UX. Most of the time what we are going to do is just code. And after we code something, we will see the screen, it won't look good, so we will try to change the design. And when we give it to the user and he won't be able to do the stuff that we want to do, then that would be a UX problem. But what if we change that order? And first thing the UX, then the UI, and then the code. So we will talk about that, about what I just said right now. This whole thing is called heuristics. So heuristics, in a nutshell, is making decisions with the information that we already have. Maybe you are building a product, or maybe you already have a product, but you are trying to improve it. Let's see how we can do that. Focus on the heuristic analysis. It's on the third column, and we will focus on that because it's the easier for us, for the developers or for the experts. There is specific rules, there are specific steps that if we do those steps, our project, our product will be excellent. And that's not me who's saying that, that's actually tests and researchers that showing that. So there are some very, very specific steps, as I said earlier, and let's define the scope of the evaluation. Ask yourself, what do I want to test? First, you have to know what you want to test, and then you have to test it. Secondly, know your end users. About who is this product. Maybe it solves a problem for you as a developer or as a designer, but does this have value for other people as well? And how other people will perceive your product? Choose your set of heuristics, and this is something that we will talk about in a bit. Set up an evaluation system and identify issue. Ask yourself how will evaluators assets and report the usability issues. And last but not least, analyze and summarize findings, because maybe you've done a great research, maybe you have some findings, but you have to make some conclusions out of it. Only research is not going to help you. And now it's time to see some examples and actually find a way to solve our products, our problems, and make our products even better. We will talk about the 10 usability heuristics by Don Norman and Jakob Nielson. They were manifested in 1995 by these two great gentlemen. And now let's start with the first one, which is visibility of system status. Imagine, like, the first thing, let me give you an example. The first thing that you do when the screen lights on your phone is to give you the time, to give you the connection, the Wi-Fi, the signal, and everything. How would you feel if you didn't have all of this? Wouldn't you feel kind of empty, like not having these things? This is visibility. You want to show to your users all the information that he needs to have. We don't want too much, but we certainly want the basic things. And if he's used to something, show that. Don't try to hide it. That's the first rule. The second one is match between the system and the real world. Again, if your user is used to something, don't take that something away. When we first started with design, we were actually trying to make things look like in real life. That's why in the example here you can see a compass, you can see a folder, you can see a bin, because we were used to see those things in real life. So then, sorry, we took those things and put it in our apps, in our products, or anything like that. So try to show things to your user that he or she will already know. The third thing is user control and freedom. Every system should have a clearly marked emergency exit mechanism. Either we want to or not, our users will make some mistakes. I know, we feel that we have the perfect product, but our users maybe are not so careful, maybe they won't see something, so they will make some mistakes. Let's give them the opportunity to go back, or undo something, or exit from something. We should always have a button like that. It's not very difficult. Just don't forget to put it right there. The fourth one, which is one of my favorites, is consistency and standards. Yes, it's nice to have something fascinated. It's nice to have something like that no one else have it. But again, remember that your users are using other products 90% of their time, so they already know how to use that other products. You don't want them to come in your product and they won't be able to do anything. You want them to move around your product, around your app very, very easily, and that's where consistency and standards are. And also, like some small things, if you have, for example, a delete action, use always the word delete. Don't say one delete, then erase, then something else. Use always the same thing. Use always the same wording inside your app. And the other thing is that, let's take again the same example with delete. Maybe sometimes you use the bin. Use always the same icon for the bin. Not, I don't know, just don't change it. Keep it always the same. Let's move on with the fifth one, which is error prevention. We talked a little bit about that. I already said that either we want to or not, our users will make mistakes. Now, there are two kinds of mistakes. It's the actual mistakes and the slips. When we mention slips, this one, it's the easier. So you can have something like an undo or something like that, that the user will be able to go back in his previous action. But what about the mistakes? Now, the mistakes are the serious one. And if the user is making a mistake, is making mistakes, it's a UX problem. It's something that we as developers or designers haven't thought of. So that's why our user is making mistakes. And if that's the case, then we should go a step back and reevaluate our system. Moving on, we have recognition rather than recall. We want everything for the user to be as easy as possible. We don't want them to make them remember things. They should just look at something and be able to understand what is it. And that's why we want a recognition. For example, give them icons, give them small images, give them some easy words. Don't overcomplicate things. Or you could have some pop-ups, or you could have, like, if they have to fill out a form, you can specify if it's a number or if it's an email or something like that. Don't just let them write and write and write. We don't want that. We want things to be as easy as possible for them. This is really, really, really important. And moving on, we have flexibility and efficiency of use. In your product, in your app, you will have some users that they will use your product for the first time, and you will also have some other users that they will use your products for a million times. So they will be, let's say, the power users. The second category of users want some things to be done fast. So maybe they want some shortcuts, maybe they want, I don't know, something fast and easy. But for your first-time users, they will want maybe some guidance, maybe they will want to see everything, maybe they want confirmation that everything is done right. In your app, make sure that you have done everything for both these type of users, for the first-time user and the power user. Again, it's really important, and as a user yourself, I'm sure you can understand that. And don't think only about yourself, because you're someone that is very well, like, you know about technology and stuff, but not all people obviously are like that. Keep that in mind, and that's why we need real users. You, as you are like a developer or designer, you are not the actual user. You're just a developer, just like in quotes. You're just the developer. You are not the user of your product. You want real users. And this is my second favorite. It's aesthetic and minimal design. Maybe, and I don't want to offend you, you're not very good at design, okay? I myself, like, I'm not very good at design. But my biggest advice would be to use white color, a lot of white color. If you are a beginner, don't just put a lot of colors right there. And also use white space, big letters, leave space between everything. Don't try to have everything together. It doesn't look good, trust me. And again, like, probably you are young, as far as I can see. Most of us here are young, and maybe we can see very good, but older people cannot see very well. So have big letters, it's important. My two advices would be Use white color and big letters, really, trust me. Okay, let's move on with the 9th one, which is help user recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. We talked a little bit about that before. Always help your users find a solution. I have here an example with, we have seen this kind of errors, I'm pretty sure, like when we are doing something silly and we will see error in that line, which is not very, very helpful. But also there are some other cases, some simple cases, that we will try to upload an image and the image won't upload, and we will say, oh, why? Maybe here we could have a message, just try to upload an image with a JPEG or a PNG, or maybe the problem is something else, maybe the image is too big. So again, specify what is the error and how the user can solve it on his own. And last but not least, help and documentation. We should strive to have a perfect product, a perfect app, but sometimes, as we said, our users maybe want some more help, and in that case, we should have some help and documentation. Now, you shouldn't have a big documentation with a lot of things inside it, just some simple pop-ups or something like that, and it can be enough. Coursera and Trello and Slack, they are doing a very good job. So if someone wants to improve their documentation, they could take a look at those apps. All right, that were the 10 examples, but we are not done yet. We have something more. Okay, this is going to be a quick guide of the do's and don'ts of UX. Let's see what you should do and what you shouldn't do as a user experience expert. So, the first one, don't assume you know what users want. Never do that. That's why we have the users and we don't have you. We have the real users. Keep that in mind. Then, don't follow the hippo at the room, and hippo stands for the highest paid person's opinion. Just because your manager or your CEO says something, it doesn't mean that it's true. They pay you because you know how to fix things. Or you should know how to fix things. Do make the time and effort for user research, and that's what we talked about. Don't just create a list of methods to check off. It's not just a to-do list. Do focus on what people say, do focus what people do rather than what they say. Just because they say something, it doesn't mean it's always true. Just look at them, see them, how they react at something, how their face looks like, what is their body posture. It's very, very important. Sometimes just by looking at a person that he's on his phone, we can understand if he's happy or not. Imagine like they're using your product. Let them not talk. Just see how they will experience in their body. Do collaborate, always collaborate. Sometimes you think that, okay, you're God and you can do everything, and maybe that's true, but listen to the other people as well. Maybe they have a nice idea or something. Do find someone qualified to do your research or make it on your own, and I hope that this presentation, I helped you make your own research. And now let's move on to the last part of this talk, which is the good and the bad of UI. Some more tips about the user interface. It will be like a small test for you, and you can decide if you are the good designer or the bad designer. I will show you both variations. So, the good designer listens to everyone from decision makers, team members, and stakeholders, whereas the bad one judges and suggests solutions all the time. So, you can pick your side. The good designer questions the status quo and digs deep to find out real problems and needs, whereas the bad one follows the rule, we are always done it that way. And how many times have you heard that? We've always done it that way. I'm pretty sure there are quite a lot. The good one takes time to ask about what is missing and is always uncertain about his understandings and designs, whereas the bad one follows his assumptions and is always certain about his work. The good one loves to be wrong and seeks feedbacks, whereas the bad one loves to be always right and seeks praise. And I'm sure that you can find some people that are in one situation or in the other situation. Also, the good one leads, whereas the bad one follows. All right, that was it, folks. I hope that you liked my presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.